motor car. And perhaps no other invention has so effectively affected the way our lives are run. A complex collection of engineering skills created in minutes. A source of heartache and headache. To some, a soulless monster thirsty for room to move. And yet, when first seen on British roads, no one suspected the horseless carriage would become the pride and problem child of the next century, except that, instinctively, authority ruled it dangerous. It was the age of Queen Victoria and of progress. Progress and reason would abolish poverty, and a land of plenty was just around the corner. William Richard Morris was born at this age of boundless British progress. He wanted to be a doctor, but his farming family were poor and his father was ill. At 15, the wage he could earn was sorely needed. But where was the future in farming? Bicycles were the thing. Bicycles were progress. He enrolled for a course of evening classes in engineering, but hardly left his James Street, Oxford home. With a capital of £4, he turned his mother's front parlour into a cycle shop and repaired bicycles in the garden shed. Whatever he did well. William Morris became the champion racer for Oxfordshire, Berkshire and Buckinghamshire, and he built his own bicycle. But this was an age of progress, and bicycles were not enough. He took a partner, inserted another advertisement in the Oxford directory, and the firm of Morris and Cooper produced its first motorcycle. But the partnership split. Too risky, said Cooper. It taught young Morris never to depend on other people for money. By scraping together every penny he could lay his hands on, by hard work, William Morris became respectably established. He repaired any bits of temperamental machinery that came his way, including a few steam cars of wealthy Oxford undergraduates. But he was an engineer who believed in progress, and by 1913, he had built his own motor car. To prove his cars, he entered 5 of them in the London-Edinburgh Rally. They won 5 gold medals, and they sold. He took over an abandoned school near Oxford and planned a production run of 3,000 cars for the second year. But the year had other things in store. June 28, 1914, saw the assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand at Sarajevo, and the world faced war. Nobody wanted motor cars. The young men who would have bought them were dying at the Somme. Only after near disaster did Morris get an order to make mines and hand grenades, and the factory just survived. With peace came prosperity. Production shot up from 200 to 50,000 cars a year, and his aim, quite simply, was to drive American Fords off British roads. Aptly named was the bull-nosed Morris. There is an opinion, Morris wrote, that if you only make enough of a given article, your prices will come down automatically. They won't. To get a bedrock selling price, you have to practice every sort of economy. There are no marble halls at Cowley and never will be. Not an unnecessary penny is spent on selling or publicity. Every halfpenny is put into production. These were brave words, not calculated to endear him to the motor trade. But competition was fierce. Wolsey, Riley and Austin were booming alongside him. And then, with the early 20s, the boom collapsed. Manufacturers sat tight and waited for the slump to pass. Not William Morris. This was the moment. This was the turning point. He attacked. He slashed his prices by £100. His decision was basic. Sales shot up and Cowley was out of the red. The year after, Morris took another hard look at his costs and slashed his prices again. His competitors groaned. When the dust had settled, 81 British car manufacturers were out of business. As an industrialist of consequence, Morris needed to safeguard his component supplies. Some of his old associates, like Lucas and Smith, who made electrical components, or Dunlops, who made tires, grew with him and weathered the crisis. Others needed rescuing. Morris took over the factory that made his radiators. In Coventry, he now had his own foundry and engine shop. He bought up the works that made his bodies. He acquired a famous carburetor plant in Birmingham. To compete with the Ford one-tonner, Morris took over a bankrupt engineering works. Within 18 months, the factory, renamed Morris Commercial Motors, turned out Morris lorries. By the end of the 20s, they made anything from a 100-weight van to taxis, ambulances, and 7-ton buses. Few firms had not been shaken by the car crisis. His biggest competitors, Austin's and Woolsey, were in difficulties. Herbert Austin suggested the three might merge to face the Ford challenge. But Morris remembered Cooper, his ex-cycling partner. No one was going to tell him how to run his company. In fact, after taking over Woolsey, he had 3 companies. Way back in 1922, Kimber, whom Morris had installed as manager of the old Morris garages, had taken standard Cowleys and Oxfords and hotted them up for competition use. The cars were called after the firm, MG, Morris Garages. They were enormously successful among enthusiasts. But Morris knew his cars had built a reputation because they were cheap and reliable. Racing cars then as now are neither. Yet the achievements of the MGs could not be denied. In the event, Morris relented and cut the apron strings. MGs were given their own factory near Abingdon, where they were to develop their own distinctive breed and mystique. Special MGs time and again took every class record on high-speed runs. But speed was not the root of the matter. Morris never wavered from his basic belief that he should manufacture a car which the ordinary man in the street could buy. As the 20s merged into the 30s, production figures at Morris alone reached the 2 million mark. Cars and lorries began to dominate and even to clutter up the English townscape. Cars took on a sleeker look. The bull-nosed radiator had gone, but the 11-horsepower engine Morris had designed in 1915 remained. Austin's, Morris's great rival, brought out an immensely successful small car, the Austin 7. As the world depression hit Britain, Morris took another giant step forward, the 100-pound car. Again, Morris had done the right thing at the right time. Morris and Austin's weathered the Depression and were one of the first firms not to make a loss. They brought out a new range of medium and big cars, pioneered fleet user, credit and hire purchase schemes. They streamlined their after-sales and service schemes and made a determined bid for exports. By the mid-30s, Morris exports were nearly 30% of the national total. Cars were the thing. They gave Morris a knighthood. Cars were progress. Cars were the future. In 1933, Sir William Morris appointed Leonard Lord, a brilliant production engineer, to take charge at Cowley. He spent a fortune installing what was then the latest in technological advance. Moving assembly lines were now the thing. Part and parcel of the same old tune, the same old story. Economy in production, increase in output, cars for the masses. But today it needed a millionaire's capital to build cars. That was all right. By keeping control of its factories, by putting everything he ever made back into the business, by thrift and an uncanny judgment, Sir William had become a millionaire. More than a millionaire. The man who above all else hated extravagance, publicity and ostentation was, incidentally, to become one of the richest men in the world. government didn't like such concentrated wealth in the hands of one man. They brought a case against him for super tax. At the end of the second day, the Attorney General prosecuting for the Crown said,
I have to be quite satisfied that the result of winning my case is going to be conducive to the national good. I have come to the conclusion that I am not going on with this case.
As the 30s drew to a close, Britain was booming. More cars were on the road than ever before. 10 years earlier, less than 1 million had owned cars. Now nearly 2.5 million did. 1 man in 20. One thing was sure, more than ever, cars were the future. For the first time ever, the shares of Morris Motors were offered to the public. Not surprisingly, there was an unprecedented stampede to buy. When a small but famous competitor, Riley's, ran into difficulties, Morris bought it, as he had bought Wolsey 10 years before. Riley's was sound. It was a pity to let the mark die, but Austin continued to provide fierce competition. Now Morris and Austin together reign supreme. Morris and Austin. Austin and Morris. And the millionth motor car. Morris saw the danger. He knew how unprepared the country was for war. Despite Chamberlain, he arranged to build the Bofor gun. As the war progressed, cars were replaced by munitions. Austin's and Morris's were bombed time and time again, but output never flagged. Peace, and cars were made once again. Shortages remained, nothing like enough to go round. Most of the cars were sold abroad. And once again, profits soared. Yet Lord Nuffield, as he now was, reaped a richer reputation.
Now, Lord Nuffield, I've been asked to present you with this Golden Heart Award, which I do with the very greatest pleasure, on behalf both of the Variety Club and of all the people who have benefited from your benefactions.
The entire output of MGs was sent to the United States. Cars had become Britain's biggest dollar earner, and the Nuffield Universal Tractor made its appearance on the world's farms. And then in 1951 was created the third biggest car manufacturing empire in the world. Austin's and Morris's combined. For the new post-war world, scale was important, size was important, resources, research were important. Only the biggest, most up-to-date units could survive globally against continental and American competition. The big, booming British Motor Corporation. But where in the midst of this empire was a young man's belief that he should manufacture a car which the ordinary man in the street could buy? Oh, it was here. It was here in the mind of Alec Isigonis, who shared that belief with his skill as a designer and produced the revolutionary Mini. From his drawing board, from those of the team of designers under him, through a drawing office of mammoth proportions, the British motor car has emerged triumphant. BMC manufacture well over 850,000 vehicles every year. Their annual exports total 320,000, and both figures are constantly rising. To keep pace with a demand that not only never abates but always increases, production techniques must be geared to accept quicker and better ways of satisfying the need of a car-minded world. Here, one man can plot the snowballing course of each individual vehicle and spot any weakness in the long and intricate chain. Today, it is still possible that the British Motor Corporation as a trade name means little to many of the millions of motorists throughout the world who drive British cars. For them, their car is an Austin or a Morris, a Woolsey or a Riley, or a sprightly MG. And the new loyalty is such that those who continually buy Austin would never consider, say, a Woolsey, even if they know that both are made by the same company. Looking at this mighty modern development of machine magic, looking and seeing a complex conjuring trick performed in metal many times a day, the hey presto which almost accompanies the transformation of raw material into gleaming motor car, watching this is to realize the magnitude of Lord Nuffield's achievement. And if so thinking, you return to the plain William Richard Morris, who wanted to be a doctor, perhaps there is some analogy between that first ambition and his ultimate success. Lord Nuffield brought into the world, cared for in times of sickness, saw grow to a healthy maturity, the British motor industry. In commercial vehicles, in agricultural vehicles, in motor cars, Britain can justly claim a foremost position in the world. The export earnings of BMC alone total the massive annual figure of £152 million. And the achievement of the British motor industry is a measure of the incredible ability of those early pioneers who joined themselves to progress. Whatever he did well. William Morris became the champion racer for Oxfordshire, Berkshire and Buckinghamshire, and he built his own bicycle.